Yes. And there's Leslie Ferreira joining us.
I need people.
There's Doris. Let me just get my... Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us online from... Welcome, Doris. Ellen, all the way from Johannesburg. She actually should be here, but she's got a deadline, so she's joining us from home. Just giving everybody a few minutes to settle in, and then we can get started.
Hi, hello everybody.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi, everyone.
How are you?
All quickly say hello while we're waiting for people to get seated. We're just going to wait another 2 minutes.
Tess, if I log off, I'll just come back in. I'm moving my laptop to a boardroom. So I'm at an event.
Let me fix my hair. That might be for Lucas.
Oh, man, Mike.
It's so great to see so many familiar faces and even unfamiliar faces. All right, so hopefully everybody's settled. Hopefully everybody has a drink or a coffee or some beverage in hand. I'm just going to stand here so that the rest of the online people can see me. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the beautiful Hotel Sky. We're sitting on the 27th floor here. For all our online people, we'll show you the rest of the venue shortly. We just got the screens down because the sun is smacking us from the west at the moment. But I just want to thank a few people. Where are we? Colette, are you? Yeah, there she is. Colette from Hotel Sky. We're going to call on her just now to explain a little bit about what this magnificent venue is about, what they can do, what it all entails. And then we've got Emmanuel Baidu from Westcro that's going to give us some very interesting economic insights. And then finally, last but not least, Tony Ukachukwu from Nigeria. He's the originator of the Walk for Love that I'm sure you all have heard about. And he is going to give us a little bit of background, what it's all about and what the future plans are with regard to that. So just to give you a little overview, what site has been up to the past, 2 years of lockdown and stops and starts and all sorts of things. It's been the most frustrating thing for our industry. Site has joined the Events Council, which was formed by 14 different event associations at the beginning of COVID lockdowns in March 2020. And even though it's been a hard struggle, I'm proud to say that we have hopefully made a difference in some of our government decisions, bringing about better understanding what our industry is about, the massive economic impact our industry has on the GDP. Also from a site point of view, we managed to start our first young leader group, 5 lovely people from across the continent. We've got Morocco, Rwanda, South Africa, and Egypt. on that little committee, and we hope to gain some momentum with that. We really need new young people in our industry. I'm not getting any younger and I want to retire soon. So find us those young people and generate some interest with our industry. We've done loads of webinars to try and keep people informed, keep people updated. And of course, our biggest concern with our industry is the lack of talent. We've lost so much talent that's gone into other industries, other countries. And I think we can all see the cracks in the surface when it comes to service levels and skills levels. So that's something we collectively need to address, and we are addressing that right now, but it's not an easy fix. So just from an awareness point of view. But also during COVID, we've seen some new hotels open, and Sky being one of them. So Colette, may I pick on you to please come and talk to us about your beautiful new product?
Hello. Not that I really need a microphone, obviously, as you all know. A little bit loud. Welcome to site, welcome friends, family, colleagues, new and old. So great to see everybody out and about and without masks. I don't know, faces for a change. Right, so thank you so much for joining us. I know that there are some new faces that maybe potentially haven't seen our property. And for those of you that have, I know a few times, welcome back. Hotel Sky, we've got two properties, which is Sandton and Cape Town. Cape Town specifically, we've just turned a year old. So we're 535 rooms and 1 year old on the 1st of April. And I must say the business trajectory, as you've all seen, I'm sure, is really starting to show. So it's on an upward curve. We're very excited. In terms of the property itself, 535 rooms, so very, very volume driven. We are officially 4-star graded, although we're finding that we are pricing ourselves at a really good price point, as you know, when we're doing quotes. We've got some lovely event spaces. We've got this beautiful event space, which is called our Sky on Long. So this event space is open for conferences, events, depends on what's happening at what time of the year. And then on Thursdays at the moment, we've got amazing swing jazz. Fridays, Saturdays, we've got an incredible DJ. So this turns into a nightclub. Obviously, for cocktails, for incentive groups, it actually works incredibly well. So if you've got a welcome cocktail, if you've got an introduction, a briefing, anything needs to happen, this is an ideal location. Once we open up the blinds, you're going to see what we're talking about, because this obviously is, there's no wind, there's no weather restrictions here. So it's an ideal location to be able to showcase the whole city. So if there's anybody who would like to see some rooms after the networking at 6 o'clock, we do have some rooms available to show. Otherwise, you're more than welcome to just rather enjoy your glass of wine and your networking, and then you can just pop me an email or an SMS or WhatsApp. Yes, SMS. Or WhatsApp or an email, and we can schedule some time during the week now that the craziness of WTN is over. But thank you again, and we look forward to welcoming you all back in some way, shape, or form. And enjoy our hospitality, and thank you again for choosing us. Yes, we really do appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. Let me just get my live face back on here. Thank you for that, Colette. And for those of you who have not seen the hotel yet, the rooms are quirky and fabulous and just amazing. So do take the opportunity when you can. Now, Tony, may I please pick on you now to kindly show your face? And I'd love for you to share with the group your story about how the Walk for Love started, And I'm very happy that Ellen and Doris, who are on board, were very involved with facilitating the first one. I'm sorry we couldn't have Vicky Sampson here, because along with the first event, we actually launched a new song of hers that tied in so beautifully with the theme of the event. But Tony, over to you. You've got a couple of minutes to share your story. And then for those who want to, we're going to take a couple of minutes if anybody has questions or suggestions for you. So Tony, all yours.
Thank you, Tess. Can you hear me?
All good.
Fantastic. Thank you for this opportunity to be here. Very excited, of course, for the first ever live in-person events organized by SITE in the pandemic. And I'm happy that we are getting some momentum to physically see each other once again, even though, of course, some of us are actually virtual. I'm in Abuja, in Nigeria, speaking to you. So I want to thank everyone for the opportunity for joining you guys. And say, Tess, thank you again. So yeah, Walk for Love was an idea that was birthed November last year, just in the thick of the Omicron virus variant in the pandemic. And I started thinking of what we can do to see how we can rebound travel and tourism, and the idea about Walk for Love came about. Basically, it was to aggregate people of like minds in the travel and tourism sector to see how we can rebound travel in our own ways. And of course, I quickly put a call to us to Tess because she was thinking, of course, in that frequency as well. And then, of course, to Doris, and we with a couple of other team members, we'll be able to pull off on the February the 12th Walk for Love campaign with the theme Connect Africa. So our mandate basically was how to use any ways, shape, and form to make sure that we rebound travel because just like the opening statement, we have our businesses in the travel and tourism, hospitality has been devastated by the pandemic. And we're looking for ways to get some traction before Omicron came. And again, it was going back, but we said, no, we have to kind of be resilient and look for ways to fight this pandemic and look for ways we can sustain our businesses. And that's how Walk for Love came. And on the 12th of February, we did an epic walk across over 17 African countries at the same time to just show resilience, show that we are up to the task to make sure that our industries are back again and that we're not going back to where we're from. And it was a resounding success. We started off from Nigeria and ended up in Cape Town with Vicky Sampson giving us the Song of Love premiere, which was very fantastic on how Africa can unite. So basically, this is an ongoing campaign. It's not a one-time event. Tess also mentioned how training and skills need to be brought back into the industry. Service levels in the industry have dropped. This is also something we are pushing because, again, apart from people getting back their businesses, there needs to be a whole lot of training and capacity building. We are going to be looking for ways where we can help with donation from kind people to train people in the travel, tourism, and hospitality industry in various shapes and forms in our different countries, with the help of our coordinators, of course. And the overarching objective is how we can get our industry, the travel and tourism and hospitality industry, back again so that we can do our businesses, the tourism receipts can grow, our destinations can open. And of course, we'll be getting some new tractions and good news with the relaxation of health protocols across countries. And that for us is a good sign. I mean, when anybody is fully vaccinated now, South African countries can travel because, again, with the health protocols, it has further increased the cost of travel. And that also increases the barrier to travel. And we're saying any barrier that is going to inhibit us from traveling across Africa and creating a domestic market in Africa is something we need to fight against. So without much ado, this is what the campaign is about, and we shall continue across Africa to continue to advocate for a connected and borderless Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony. So Ellen, would you like to add anything? Maybe share some of your experiences when you did the Joburg walk. What was the best thing that stood out for you when you did the Joburg event? And remember to unmute yourself.
It was quite a challenge to be thrown in at this job, but it was great. It was good to organize, and the PCO Alliance assisted me. So all our members was involved. We had it at the Indaba Hotel, and Indaba kindly also sponsored the venue. And the vibe was excellent. Everybody enjoyed it. And a lot of the travel industry and hotel people asked we must do it again, because everybody could see each other again. We could network, we could touch, because we all like to hug and touch. But and all the travel people that was there enjoyed it. We had venues participating, sponsoring water points, and they all loved it, and they want to do it again. They said we should do this more often, actually. So Joburg was up and running, and it was a great success.
No, absolutely. And I must say, one thing that I think COVID has taught all of us is true collaboration. Because we always talk about it, but do we really do it? And I think we can safely say that throughout COVID, we've learned to pull together, work together, and make things work. And Walk for Love was certainly one of them.
Yes.
But Doris, can we hop over to you? Because Doris was instrumental in helping from a strategic point of view and coordinating the East Africa side of things. So Doris, any takeaways from you that you want to share?
Okay, I'm at home and it's right in the middle of people doing dinner, so I'm trying to find a quiet spot where there are no blenders and whatever else, you know. Yeah, so hi everyone. Glad to talk to you all again. Can you hear me? You can hear me?
Sorry, Doris, can
Go
you
ahead,
maybe
Doris.
turn up the volume
Yes.
on your side a little bit?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, let me, I know. Can you hear me?
Now we can, yeah.
Wow.
Keep trying.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes, yes, you
Oh.
can.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. Well, hi everyone. Very good to see and hear all of you here. I'm moving around the house because there's kids and dinner and all sorts. I'm trying to find a quiet spot. I'm at the balcony now, which is not that quiet because you'll hear other kids playing, but here we go. Yeah, my take on the Walk for Love. I mean, I didn't know what to expect. I have to tell you, I really did not know what to expect. Initially, I just wanted to say, no, this is impossible. Remember, Tony, I told you I want to back out. I think I told you, Tess, as well. But then in the end, I was like, what? Let's just do this from another perspective. So we didn't organize a walk in Tanzania where I was at the time. But what I did was in the secretariat. So we did the communications and media side of things, it was actually phenomenal to see the response from all the countries that participated. It really went over and beyond my own expectations. So I at that point I was thinking, oh my goodness, why didn't Tanzania and Rwanda participate? So then we said we're going to do an East Africa one because, you know, it was such a good initiative to be a part of. It is still such a good initiative, as I think Ellen has said, for us to keep doing, maybe with different angles or with different purposes, but it's definitely worth doing it again. It's also worth leveraging the Walk for Love on other tourism related, you know, issues. It might not, I mean, that issue that at the time was about COVID issues and vaccines and protocols, but now that is soon to be a thing of the past. What will be the next issue that we're going to walk for? But it really is a good initiative. Unfortunately, again, as I say, East Africa didn't get to participate for many, many reasons. Hopefully next time we'll be able to do just that. And for me, what I'd like to see is what Walk for Love being talked about, gaining more participants, even further than the African continent. There's no reason why it can't be. You know, with platforms such as the Next Site or the Next IMEX, anything is possible. And this was quite evident when we saw it. This idea just ran, and within a few weeks, about 12 African countries participated. So imagine if you plan it for half a year or 4 months, how much traction are you going to get? And then suddenly now voices of tourism can be heard. There's so many issues going around that we need a strong voice for tourism. And I think Walk for Love is a very good platform for that. So yeah, well done again, Tony.
Absolutely.
Doris.
Congratulations and well done with that initiative, Tony. Now, good news at this stage. We don't know exactly what is happening with Indaba, but SA Tourism actually asked us to do the Walk for Love during Indaba. Obviously, there were massive consternation and crisis with KZN this past week with the floods. So for all intents and purposes, it is going ahead. So watch the space. We'll post and let you know exactly what's happening. But yeah, so it'll be great if we could do this with our major trade shows across Africa. And of course, one of the big drivers is to get Africans to start collaborating, for African countries and African businesses to do business with each other. I mean, there's no reason why Coca-Cola from Nairobi should not come to Cape Town for their next conference or incentive, or MTN in Lusaka to go to Accra for their next conference. Now, instead of going to Europe or going to America or to Dubai, whatever, we've got so many beautiful things in our own backyard, and we need to start helping each other promote ourselves, from ourselves to ourselves. Now, with all that in mind, any questions for Tony or Doris or Ellen? All good. And then I just want to do one more big thank you, and that is Wesgro, who is also the Cape Town Convention Bureau. They've been such fantastic supporters for the Walk for Love, Foresight, and all our future endeavors. And Adrian and Larisha from Wesgro are here tonight. So thank you for Wesgro and the Cape Town Convention Bureau for all the support. Thank you. So speaking of Wesgro, I would now love to invite Emmanuel Baidu to come and give us some insights on the economic impact of recent events. So Emmanuel, if you could come and join us up front, please. And of course, online people are more than welcome to stay on, because I'm sure you will find his talk quite fascinating. So I'm going to, would you like to be on the screen, or would you like to move about? Are you going to have to press the buttons there anyway? Please just be careful. Come this way around. Be careful of the cable. All right, so we're handing over to Emmanuel. Just getting our corners sorted out here. And you can use that as your desk. Thank you. Emmanuel Baidu. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Yeah, so my name is Emmanuel Baidu, and I'm part of the research team. So I'm actually an economist with the research team of Wesgro. And today I'm here to give you an overview of the current economic situation. So my presentation is going to be brief. I will start with on a global scale, narrow down to Africa, to South Africa, and the Western Cape. Yeah. All right.
Much better.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So on a global scale, we've seen the world go through a lot in the past few years. So starting with COVID, as if that was not enough, then just as the world was getting a bit of normality, the Russia-Ukraine war came in. So we've seen economic growth. So initially growth was projected the growth that were projected for the global economy and subsequent other sub-regional and national economies have been adjusted downwards. And that is due to what happened in the last part of 2021, which was the Omicron that came, and also in what is happening currently is the Russia-Ukraine war that is having some consequences on economic growth. So the war would impact on economic growth. It will also have effects on prices, especially food prices and energy. And then that would trickle down to every economy in the world, although it's only happening in Russia. The fact being that as we go through the slides, you will know why that is the case, why the war is going to have ripple effect on all of us, although it seems to be far away from us. So recently, the World Economic Outlook was adjusted downwards. And this was because this doesn't even take into account the Russia-Ukraine war. Remember, the war started in late February, but this adjustment came in January. And this adjustment downwards was because of Omicron that had some impact on growth. So initially, growth was expected to be a bit higher than what is currently projected. So we see that for the global economy, growth is going to be about 4.4% in 2022. And this downscaling is partly due to two of the world's major economies, US and China, also having to downgrade their growth. And this has had an impact on the global economic outlook of the whole world. And as I emphasized earlier, the Russia-Ukraine war is also going to play a part. So the World Economic Forum is supposed to release their April figures. So I'm sure it should be out now. I checked before I came here and it wasn't out. So we expect the growth projections to be further downgraded. Now, how is the war impacting us? The major impact is going to be through slower growth and faster inflation. So economic growth is going to be slower and inflation is we've already seen inflation going up in the whole world, and South Africa has not been spared, or Africa has also not been spared. Now, the impact is going to be felt through three main spillover channels. So the first one will be higher commodity prices. Second one will be disruptions in trade and global supply chains. This will be very prominent for countries, for neighboring countries. So the second point would have a lesser effect on us, but for neighboring countries, it will have a major impact on them, especially for countries that for neighboring countries that have direct trade and tourism with Russia and Ukraine. And finally, there will be reduced business confidence. So we all know what effect once there's news or evidence of war, confidence or business confidence is negatively impacted. Then beyond the global spillover, additionally, countries that are close by are going to be impacted, and they are going to feel the impacts on trade, their tourism sector, and also financial exposures. There will be wider fiscal and trade deficit because of the greater the inflation that is happening. Prices are going up, and as prices go up, it means that countries will have to now pay more for oil and energy, and that is going to have an impact on their fiscals. There's also possibility of risks or unrest in some regions. As price escalates, consumer sentiments may lead to unrest in some regions. Yeah, so one of the major channels through which the war or the invasion of Russia in Iraq is impacting the globe is through commodity prices. So we've seen over the past few months, we've seen unprecedented increases in crude oil and food prices. And one of the main reasons why this is of particular concern to Africa is because about 40%. So if you look at the slide on the right, Sub-Saharan Africa spends a lot, or consumer food, the share of food on consumer, the CPI of Africa is about 40%, which is considerably higher than for advanced economy, which is only about 17%. So as food prices go up, it is going to have a considerable impact on the rest of Africa, or Africa as a whole. So I mentioned in the earlier slide, I mentioned that commodity prices are increasing, and these are 4 of the main channels through which that is taking place. We've seen prices of Brent crude rising. We've seen natural gases rising. We've seen on the agricultural side, we've seen corn and wheat prices rising, and also metals. And the reason why we're seeing these changes is because Russia is a powerhouse when it comes to oil and gases, and also together with Ukraine, they are also powerhouses when it comes to agricultural products like wheat and corn. So one of the main channels through which this is impacting us is through inflation. So we've seen major economies, prices of goods and services rising in major economies, the Eurozone. So here, Japan is the only exception. Apart from Japan, all the major economies, the Eurozone, UK and the US have all seen rising, or are all witnessing rising prices. Although it is projected that prices would, as things normalize a bit, the prices will be adjusted downwards. But as it stands now, the prices of goods and services or inflation is on a rising trend across the globe. Now, these are some of the industries. So some industries will feel a greater impact, or will be impacted higher than others. And this is the industry that will have high impact is because of the role that Russia or Ukraine plays on the globe with respect to this product. So with one of the higher impacts, some of the high impacts sectors will be oil and gas, mining and metals, agribusiness, food and drink, and to some extent, tourism would only have a minimal impact. The reason why it will have a medium impact, the reason why the impact on tourism or tourism is medium is because the impact is going to be, the major impact is going to be felt by countries that deal directly with Russia or Ukraine. Okay, so on a global scale, the impact will be minimal. Or one of the main channels through which the whole globe will be impacted will be when the war leads to, or if the war leads to reduction in travel confidence, then ultimately that the impacts may be adjusted upwards. But as it stands now, the countries that deal directly with Ukraine and Russia are the ones that are feeling the major impacts in the tourism sector. When it comes to autos, both Ukraine and Russia play a huge role in the automotive industry. So that is also going to have a major or high risk impact. And then finally, logistics and shipping. So we've seen so for logistics and shipping, we can look at it from the airspace. So a lot of Russian airspace has been banned. We can also look at it from ports, and also, so on the port side, Russia, most of the ports, or the ports in Russia have been closed for business, and that is impacting the transportation or the movement of goods. And we've also, on the air side, we've also seen a lot major airlines not being able to operate in the Russia airspace. Okay, so that is how that aspect is also going to have a high risk impact. So now we narrow it down to Africa. So the growth projections for Africa, so due to the impact of the pandemic, we saw a dip or a huge recession that was a decline of 1.7 in the GDP of the continent. But growth is projected to be rising in the coming years. So this, it was projected to be rising to 3.7 in 2021, and also 3.6 in 2022. Then recently, the World Economic Forum in January this year, adjusted the growth prospects. So that is the slide on the right. Okay, so the updates are not too far from what was initially intended. Although, for example, for 2021, it is slightly adjusted upwards. But as I said, the new economic indicators that are coming up may further, I'm assuming that it will be further adjusted downwards because of what is going on in Russia and Ukraine. So this slide basically deals with how COVID impacted the African continent. So the major impact was felt by economies that are highly dependent on tourism. So those were the three main. It was tourism dependent economies, oil exporters, and other resource intensive economies that felt the major impact of COVID. Although the tourism dependent economies felt the major impact of the pandemic, they are also the economies that are projected to rise higher in the coming years. So for 2021, the industry with the high, or the part of the African continent with the highest growth prospects are those that are highly dependent on tourism. And also looking at how the pandemic is impacting on Africa, Africa is vulnerable to war effects, be it in any part of the world, because most African economies are open and they trade with the rest of the world. And being an open economy means that whatever happens in the rest of the world gets imported into the local economy. So the impacts in Africa will come through higher food prices, higher energy prices, lower tourism revenues, and then global financing conditions may also hamper the flow of capital into the continent. Africa is going to be impacted because Africa also is highly dependent on agricultural imports from Russia and Ukraine. The continent imports about 80% of wheat from Russia or Ukraine, which is one third of which counts. So 80% of the continent wheat is imported, and one third of this is from Russia or Ukraine. So this is one of the channels through which the war is going to impact on Africa. Africa is also dependent on wheat, and 13 African countries greater than 50% of wheat from Russia, or get greater than 50% of wheat from Russia or Ukraine in 2020, or sorry, 2021. So this means that for those 13 African countries that got more than 50% of their wheat from Russia or Ukraine, they are going to feel the impact of the war. If you look at extreme countries, so the countries that will be affected the most will be Eritrea and Somalia. Eritrea getting 100% of their wheat from Russia or Ukraine, and Somalia getting 90% of their wheat from Russia or Ukraine. Africa is also dependent on fertilizer from Russia and Ukraine, and 9 African countries source more than 20% of their fertilizers from Russia, Ukraine in the past year, and the countries with the highest percentage of import of fertilizer from Russia, Ukraine are Cameroon and Ghana. So on the flip side, as commodity prices rises, we expect some commodity-rich countries in Africa to benefit. So South Africa being recently, well, yeah, I think this week the South African Reserve Bank adjusted South Africa's growth prospect upwards. And one of the main reasons they give for adjusting the growth prospect upwards was because of the improvement in the terms of trade. The terms of trade is basically the ratio of the price of import to that of export to that of imports. And as price of commodity rises, Africa will benefit by getting higher revenue or more revenue as we export those commodities. But that increase in prices can easily be offset by the higher inflation or the rising prices. Okay, so although those resource intensive economies are likely to benefit, they are also likely to lose out on the higher inflation that is affecting the whole world. So the tourism sector as a whole on the globe is enjoying, there was a strong start to 2020, and that is particularly in the first month of the year, we saw international tourist arrivals more than double in January 2020 compared to same time last year. Although it is still below the pre-pandemic level, if you look at the global, the whole world, it is still 67% below the pre-pandemic level, but there's some progress being made compared to 2020. The regions that made the highest movement are Europe and the Americas. So for those two continents, they are now they are moving closer to 50%, or they've moved about closer to 50% of the capacity that was the pre-pandemic capacity. Now, this slide just gives us an overview of the rank. So this ranking is done by Fitch Solutions, and they rank African or all economies in the world based on their reward and risk factors. So the higher the value, a greater value means a better prospect for that country. So based on that, Africa, in terms of Africa, these are the top 10 African countries according to the risk reward index. So Mauritius is number 1, South Africa, Namibia. So we see here that the countries that perform better are Southern African countries. Okay, so Southern African countries do better when it comes to tourism on the continent. Now moving to South Africa, economic growth is surprisingly on an upward trend. So South Africa's economic growth has traditionally been lower, always between 1 point something to 2%, but surprisingly, in spite of the COVID, although there was a slight dip in 2020, which was as a result of what was happening on the global economy, that is the impact of the pandemic. But surprisingly, we are seeing the economy getting back on track. Although we are experiencing higher food prices, and food price and fuel price inflation is on the rise, and that is because of what is being imported from the Russia-Ukraine war. There's some progress being made and some opportunities that exist that the economy can rely on. So looking at economic growth, real GDP increased by 1.2% in the fourth quarter of the previous year. And this, because of this increase, we've seen the national economy increasing by 4.9% in the last year. And this is a huge improvement compared to the minus 6.4% that was recorded in 2020. Now, GDP, recently, the South African Reserve Bank projected that they expect GDP to breach the pre-pandemic level in the third quarter of 2020. So that it means that in the third quarter of 2020, the level of economic activities would surpass what transpired before the pandemic. And they also expect manufacturing to play a critical role in this economic recovery. Growth expectation has, as I mentioned earlier, has recently been adjusted upwards by the South African Reserve Bank. And the reason for this upward adjustment is because of the increased improvement in the terms of trade, as I emphasized earlier. Now, the Russian-Ukraine war is being felt, and I've already explained the channel through which it is impacting South Africa and the rest of the continent. So that the impact is coming through rising commodity prices, which has an impact on the balance of payments of South Africa, the fiscus, and we also seen an upward pressure on prices in general. So this is these are the inflation outlook for South Africa. So South Africa, for those of you who don't know, South Africa practices what we call inflation targeting, and the aim is to keep inflation between 3% and 6%. So the Monetary Policy Committee aims to keep inflation between the mid-range of 3% and 6%. But in recent months, we've seen it going above the mid-range, and that is due to increases in non-core components of inflation, which is mostly food and fuel prices. So as these two increases, we've seen in February, inflation was about 5.7%, which is closer to the upper bound of 6% of the SARS targeting range, or sorry, of the South African Reserve Bank target range. In the coming years, that is in particular for 2022, inflation would move back or would reduce and even move below the mid-range of the targeting range. So what are the progresses that have been made and then the opportunities that exist? So in South Africa, there are so since the dawn of democracy, there's been three main devils that have been hunting the South African economy, and these are poverty, unemployment, and inequality. So these three are intertwined, and that most policy interventions that have been implemented by government have been revolved around solving these three challenges. Although South Africa is still one of the most unequal societies in the world, or also has one of the highest unemployment, but at least progress is being made in terms of the policies that are being implemented. So although we have high inequality, we also have high social system that try to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor. So although South Africa is not a socialist economy, but expenditure on social assistance is up there with countries that are socialist economies. So we've seen for South Africa to be on a positive growth path, we need deep structural reforms, and those reforms should speak to the three events or the three devils that I spoke about earlier. So notwithstanding this negativities, we expect a boom in revenue, and this is because South Africa is a resource endowed economy, and as the prices of resources or commodities rises, there will be a revenue boom, and that revenue boom can help to reduce the rising the rising government debt or the fiscus that has always been in negatives. So we on another note, we also expect that once the continental free trade agreement is normalized, so it's still that country is still joining, but once it gets to full speed, we expect South Africa to benefit, because that would ease the movement of goods and services and also of people on the continent. And as that happens, we expect exports to expand, and as export increases, that would narrow down, or there will be a ripple effect on economic growth and then employment creation. The SARB also recently announced that there's been an improvement in business confidence. So business confidence has risen above the pre-pandemic level, and this is good for the economy. All right, so now coming home to the Western Cape, the Western Cape economy is a resilient economy, but it's also an open economy, and being an open economy means that it's affected by what happens on the globe. Although the economy has been resilient in recent times and has been able to deal with all the shocks, the external shocks that have been coming our way. The economy of the Western Cape is service-led. That is more than 70% of the economy of the Western Cape is attributed to the services sector. That is in terms of output and also employment. The province has seen a lot of movement in FDI. So the province has witnessed FDI flows or competes competitively when it comes to attracting FDI into the economy. The Russia-Ukraine war is having a short-term, the impact on the province is not as major as that of South Africa as a whole, because as you will see in some few slides to come, you will see that our trade with Russia and Ukraine, it's only about a small percent. So the impact is not going to be as major for the Western Cape as it is for other economies. So this is the economic growth prospect of, so past and also future growth prospect of the province compared to that of the country as a whole. So we see that the province sort of mimics what happens in the country as a whole. So after a dip in the value of goods and services produced in the economy, in 2020, due to the pandemic, we saw a rise, a huge jump in 2021. And so we've seen that the economy is recovering, but then that huge jump is not going to be maintained. Growth is projected to be a bit lower in the coming years before normalizing in 2023. So as I emphasized earlier, the Western Cape economy is service-led. A huge part of economic activities is centered around the tertiary sector or the services industry. Here, the financial real estate business services, as well as tourism and trade, plays a huge role when it comes to economic activity in the province. And that is not just for the past year, it's been the trend over the past few years or over the past decade. Those sectors have been consistently the top performers for the province. On the side of trade, the reason why I emphasized earlier that the pandemic, as well as the Russia-Ukraine war, is having a minimal impact on the province is because in spite of what was happening in the rest of the world, the province's exports increased in 2021. So there's not been a reduction in export in spite of what is going on on the globe. So in 2021, export increased by 22%, and this was due to a huge improvement in trade relationship between the Western Cape and the US. So traditionally, Europe has been the top destination region for product from the Western Cape. So European countries have been the top countries, but in the past year, the US was the Western Cape's top destination market for our exports. Now, the war in Russia and Ukraine would have some impact on the province, but on a minimal scale. So I emphasized earlier that most of the goods that the province exports to Russia are in the agribusiness. So 9 out of the 10 products that the Western Cape exports to Russia are agricultural or agri-processing commodities. And so Russia was the Western Cape's 4th export market globally for citrus in 2021. Although this was the case, that value is only about 8.7% of the Western Cape's global export of citrus. Okay, so it would have some impact, but it's not going to be as severe as if the Western Cape was, for instance, exporting about 50% of our citrus to Russia, Ukraine, then the impact was going to be huge. But because we are exporting less than 10% of our citrus to Russia or Ukraine, the impact may not be as huge as on other economies. Then Russia was also the province's second export market for apples and pears in 2021. And this is equivalent to 9.9%, so still close to 10% of the province global export of these products. On the import front, Russia was the Western Cape's 28th largest import source market in the past year. And fertilizer dominated, so fertilizer dominated the Western Cape's imports from Russia. In terms of FDI, so globally, we've seen more countries competing for FDIs. And so the reduction in the FDI numbers for the Western Cape is not due to poor performance, but it's due to the market becoming highly contestable. And so we've seen players like Westgrow playing a huge role in trying to attract investors. So although the numbers have not been have not been rising, but then the Western Cape remains competitive when it comes to attracting FDI in the world. The top performers or the top sectors that attract the highest FDI in terms of in terms of the number of projects is the services industry, and in terms of the value of the investment, it is the renewable energy sector. Now, the renewable energy sector is leading in terms of the amount of CapEx, or in terms of capital expenditure, because of the highly capital intensive nature of that industry. So one project in that industry kind of sets more about 10 projects in other industries. So though it's the 9th sector when it comes to the number of projects, with only 11 projects, it is the first when it comes to the value of the investment. On the tourism front, we've seen things getting back to normal. So we've, after a reduction in both international and domestic travels over the past year, the beginning of 2022 has seen, so January, we saw an improvement in international travels, and also in February, we've seen international travel gradually increasing. So this is the movement of tourists through the Cape Town International Airport. Okay, so we've seen a huge improvement in the coming month. So we're yet to see, so March figures would tell us whether the Russia-Ukraine war, the impacts of the Russia-Ukraine war on international and domestic tourist arrivals at the Western Cape, at Cape Town International Airport. So that is it from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for sharing that incredible and mind-blowing information with us. Any questions for Emmanuel from the floor? Nothing so far, but please engage with him afterwards and have a chat. And I think everybody's raving for a snack right now. So if there's food on the way, bring it out and let's network. Thank you very much. And thank you again to Westgrow. And then we can get the music on as well, guys. Thank you. Oh, those people still there. So I'm just going to speak to them privately. Hello. Hold on, hold on, hold on. Hi guys, can you hear me? Tony, you there? Doris?
I'm here live.
Oh,
Can
Tony,
you
I
hear
can
me?
see you speaking, but I can't hear you. Let's see. Well, thanks, guys. I hope you could see the presentation. I wasn't sure if you could actually see it.
Can you hear me?
Okay, I think
That was-
Doris is want to cook food for the kids.
That was a great presentation from
No, Tony, I
Emmanuel.
can't hear you at all. Hold on, let me just see if it's on my side. Hmm. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me?
No, I can't hear you at all. No, Tony, could you see the presentation or could you only hear it?
I could only hear it. I didn't see it.
Oh,
Can you hear me
okay,
now?
Okay. What I'll do is I'll ask Emmanuel to actually share the presentation with us and I'll email it to you. But I haven't heard anything further from Indaba. It's been a bit of a crazy day. So can I give you a call tomorrow?
Sure. Sure.
So are you still in Abuja?
Yes, I'm still in Abuja.
Okay. I'm lip reading now. I'm getting pretty good at it. But all right. So let me know about the visa and hopefully see you in Durban next week.
Hopefully. Oh,
Absolutely.
fingers
Thank you
crossed.
so much for coming.
Great
We'll
job.
see you
Great
soon.
job. Enjoy your
Doris, if you
networking
can hear me,
session.
cheers. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Enjoy.